After 5 years, today the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris reopens its doors and invites worshippers in. This church has stood the test of time for roughly 850 years, and we're not about to let that stop. In honor of that, here is a video of 35 fun facts about Notre Dame. Number 1. Notre Dame means Our Lady in French, and the cathedral is dedicated to the Virgin Mary, who gave birth to Christ. Number 2. Notre Dame was the center of religious power in medieval France. The cathedral was one of the first Gothic cathedrals ever built and helped to define the Gothic style, which is still used in many churches built today. It was created to resemble Saint-Denis, which is believed to be the very first Gothic church. Number 3. The cathedral was the beloved project of Maurice de Sully, begun shortly after he was made Bishop of Paris. It was championed by King Louis VII, who wanted the cathedral to be a symbol of Parisian supremacy. Building began in 1163, and while the construction happened in various stages, most of the cathedral was actually completed by the time of the bishop's death in 1196. Pope Alexander III laid the cornerstone in 1163, and in 1185, Heraclius, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, officiated in the completed sanctuary. Number 4. Notre Dame is built in the Latin cross design common to the Gothic era and extremely popular in French cathedrals. The choir, however, is slightly offset, leaning more to the left side of the central nave to approximate the drooping head of Christ as he was crucified. Number 5. The cathedral is a mathematical marvel. One of the wonders of classic architecture is their usage of what is referred to as sacred geometry, essentially a mathematical formula for beauty using the study of natural shapes and patterns to find divine perfection. Notre Dame applies the golden ratio, meaning that the height of the facade and its width are as close as possible to pi, or around 1.6. Notre Dame's ratio of 1.72 is considered a golden rectangle. Number 6. The number 7, considered the divine number of perfection, is also used in multiple ways in the cathedral. The nave is divided into 7 bays, supported on each side by 7 flying buttresses. Interestingly, there are a total of 153 bays, a number which represents the number of fish caught by the apostles. 12 small chapels symbolize both the 12 apostles as well as the 12 tribes of Israel. And one other biblical measurement applies to the main church, which is said to be 30 cubits high, the same height as Noah's Ark. Number 7. Let's look at some other fun numbers. The cathedral is 233 feet tall, not counting the center spire, and the nave inside is 115 feet high. At the time of its construction, it was the tallest building to be constructed since Egypt's Great Pyramid at Giza. The rose windows are 42 feet in diameter. The spire is made of 500 tons of wood and 250 tons of lead. There are 8,000 pipes in the organ. The cathedral can hold 9,000 worshippers, and over 12 million people come to see the cathedral from all over the world every year. Number 8. The cathedral was built over the site of multiple earlier religious buildings, including a temple dedicated to Jupiter in ancient Rome, an early Christian church from the 4th century, and a Romanesque cathedral. Number 9. Notre Dame was arguably the first Gothic cathedral to utilize the now famous flying buttress. Prior to this period of architecture, all structural support for a church was done on the inside, typically with arches and columns. The larger a church, the thicker and heavier the supports had to be. Architecture was limited in height, and windows were limited in number and size, often creating very dark spaces. Notre Dame developed supports which extended from the outside of the building, holding up and bearing the weight of heavy stonework, channeling the force of pressure into the ground. This buttressing allowed for larger, taller buildings with less blocky designs, as well as higher and more expansive interiors with grand windows to let in more light. To this day, flying buttresses are considered one of the most revolutionary developments in architectural history. Number 10. The roof of the cathedral was designed using a special lattice pattern created from 52 acres of 12th century oak trees. Each tree was its own individual beam. The usage of the trees inspired its nickname, the Forest. By the way, the same technique was in fact used in the restoration to recreate the cathedral as faithfully as possible. While we obviously lost the original trees to the fire, dozens of 150-year-old trees were cut down to repair the roof. This decision did come with some criticism, but French officials had plans to remove the trees already as part of standard forest maintenance. Number 11. There is a legend which contends that the main gate's ironwork was fashioned by the devil himself. The blacksmith who created the wrought iron gate, a man named Biscornet, crafted the gate so well that it was believed he had struck a deal with the devil in order to create it, and that the gate was cast by the forces of hell rather than wrought by mortal hands. The legend said that as Biscornet, who was struggling to finish his monumental work and stressed out about it, he called upon the devil to help him complete it in exchange for his very soul. He finished in just a few more days and was found unconscious in his workshop upon its completion. The devil wished to intervene in plans for the cathedral, and the gate itself actually blocked the opening to the cathedral on its inaugural day in 1345. The locks proved impossible to open. It is said holy water sprinkled on the gate was necessary to unlock it and enter the cathedral, and Biscornet himself was said to have mysteriously disappeared after the inauguration. Number 12. Most historical places have their own stories of haunting and spooks, and Notre Dame is actually no exception. The cathedral is said to be haunted by a number of spirits, including kings and monks. One legend tells of a phantom bell ringer who appeared on Christmas Day. Another speaks of 7 decapitated men searching for their heads. Yet another finds a wandering nun roaming the streets near the cathedral. And of course, Biscornet is said to appear at his own cursed gate from time to time. The most common ghost sightings, however, are of 2 women who float amongst the grotesques. The women are unknown, but the story is told that in 1882, a young girl was refused entrance to the tower because she was without a chaperone. She struck up an acquaintance with an older woman who agreed to be her chaperone, and the following day they were admitted by the guard into the tower. It was raining, and the older woman sought shelter in the bell ringer's room where she then heard a scream. The young girl had apparently leaped off the tower to her death. The girl was never identified, and the elderly woman disappeared and was never seen again in life. Number 13. In a book published in 1923 called The Mystery of Cathedrals, the author contends that the sculpture work on the exterior of Notre Dame depicts the mysteries of alchemy, including the secret of the famous Philosopher's Stone. The north tower roof reportedly features an image of an alchemist with a wizard's hat, and the main portal of the cathedral, also known as the Portal of the Last Judgment, is said to hold the key to the Philosopher's Stone, which is supposed to transform all metal into gold and contains the elixir of life. Number 14. Cathedrals are often known for their bells. They are usually named, and those at Notre Dame are no exception to this. The south tower houses 10 bells, the largest of which is called Emmanuel. The bells ring out to herald special events such as coronations, papal visits, and the endings to wars. The bells of Notre Dame even rang out over Paris on 9/11. Number 15. One coronation which took place at Notre Dame was that of an English king. That's right, I said English. Henry VI, the only child of Henry V, was the only English king crowned in France. Born in 1821 during the 100 Years' War, he was technically king upon the death of his father when he was only 8 months old, making him the youngest monarch to gain the throne. He was not crowned until later, and was crowned in both England when he was 7 and France when he was 10. Number 16. In 1592, Notre Dame played host to the wedding of Marguerite de Valois and Henri of Navarre. As a Protestant, Henri was not allowed to attend the Mass at his own wedding and was forced to follow along from the square in front of the cathedral. Number 17. Notre Dame is considered the center of the city of Paris and is the point of origin for all roads in France. Have you ever heard the expression, all roads lead to Rome? Well, in France, all roads lead to Notre Dame. In 1769, King Louis XV issued letters of patent which made it officially the epicenter of all the nation's roads. And in 1924, a compass-shaped stone was added, labeling the spot Point Zero. Number 18. Speaking of Point Zero, there are several rituals and customs associated with this stone. Largely of the wish-granting variety you might see at a fountain or a well, you can often see coins in the concave center of the marker. Romantic rituals include spinning in a circle at the center of the stone with one foot raised in order to obtain your heart's desire, or kissing a loved one across it to celebrate your eternal devotion. And travelers have their own ritual at Point Zero, visiting the site when they finish their time in Paris and feel they have experienced the city to its fullest. Number 19. And in the spirit of Christmas, one last fun fact about Point Zero at Notre Dame. This is the location where the annual Christmas tree, a gift from Sweden, is placed during the holiday season. This does cover the stone entirely, but the Christmas tree will mark the center of Paris. Number 20. During the French Revolution, violent mobs destroyed churches and even murdered clergy. They took over Notre Dame, plundering its riches and damaging its beauties, and then transformed it into the temple of reason for the cult of the Supreme Being. After that, the cathedral stood largely forgotten and was used for nothing more than storage for wine barrels. Number 21. Also as part of the ravagements of the French Revolution were the beheadings of Notre Dame. No, not actual beheadings. In this case, it was beheadings of statues. Notre Dame is covered in statuary including 28 kings of Judah. Disgusted with their own monarchy and believing the statues to be representations of French kings, the revolutionaries beheaded all the kings of Judah. 21 heads have since been recovered and are housed in a museum. Number 22. Revitalization of interest in Notre Dame was sparked by two main people. The first was Napoleon. In December of 1804, Napoleon chose Notre Dame as the cathedral where he would be crowned. Napoleon, of course, famously broke with tradition by taking the crown from the Pope and crowning himself, and then he announced that the cathedral would be restored to its former glory. Number 23. While Napoleon began the return of Notre Dame, it was not until 1843 that the real effort began, thanks to writer Victor Hugo. Hugo's book, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, published in 1831, brought back public interest in the church, and pleas began to be heard for its restoration. So, in 1843, Eugene Viollet-le-Duc launched the restoration in earnest, giving us the Notre Dame we know and love today. Number 24. We gotta talk about those famous gargoyles. Or rather, as my followers may already know, the grotesques. If you watch movies like Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame, the grotesques play a part. They're active characters. Ironically, however, those statues did not exist at the time the book was written. They would not be added until the restoration in the 1840s, which the book itself inspired. Obviously, they are not actually gargoyles, as they have no function as active drains, but the grotesques are one of the most well-recognized features of the cathedral. Number 25. Another addition from the 19th century reconstruction was the famous spire, which toppled in the 2019 fire and crashed through the interior of the church, and has since been rebuilt with the rest of the church. Interestingly, the spire was not initially well received. People felt the addition was unnecessary and clashed with the original architecture. Number 26. The spire is surrounded by figures of the 12 apostles as well as the symbols of the 4 evangelists. All of the apostles are faced outwards towards Paris with a single exception, St. Thomas. St. Thomas, the patron saint of architects, looks towards the spire as if in contemplation. It is believed to be a self-portrait of Viollet-le-Duc. Number 27. At the top of this spire was a figure of a rooster. The rooster was actually the housing for 3 of Notre Dame's relics: a small piece of the crown of thorns, a relic of Saint Denis, and a relic of Saint Genevieve. The piece from the crown of thorns was placed there by Viollet-le-Duc himself. In the newly rebuilt spire, the rooster was actually replaced by a phoenix, an obvious symbol of the rising of Notre Dame from the ashes. Number 28. Notre Dame is home to several famous relics, most notably the crown of thorns, which was originally intended for Sainte-Chapelle. Other significant relics include a piece of the cross, a holy nail from the crucifixion, as well as King St. Louis's tunic, his jaw, and one of his ribs. For those wondering, why the relics of King Louis? Louis IX, who later became a saint, was known for bringing the other relics from Jerusalem to Paris. These relics are also known as relics of the Passion. They cost Louis half of France's annual budget and sent the country into a debt that would last 50 years. Number 29. Following the fire of 2019, relics were not only saved and preserved, but archaeologists uncovered more than 1,000 artifacts beneath the church. There were limestone statues, including at least one of Christ, many graves, putting the burial count of Notre Dame at over 500, a lead sarcophagus which is believed to be the burial place of a famous French poet, and even a rood screen dating back to the 13th century. These were taken to the Louvre for cleaning and restoration along with the relics, stained glass, and other artworks. Number 30. Notre Dame was the symbol of French liberation following the surrender of German occupation troops at the end of World War II. On August 25, 1944, Charles de Gaulle marched into the city and straight to the cathedral, where the bells rang out in freedom and victory. De Gaulle even joined the choir in singing the Magnificat. A Te Deum was also celebrated just a few months later in May of 1945 to declare final victory over the Nazi forces. Number 31. This cathedral was the site of poet Paul Claudel's conversion. Claudel was an agnostic in his early life, but had a remarkable change at the age of 18 while visiting Notre Dame. His own powerful encounter with God happened on Christmas of 1886 during Vespers. As he was standing inside the cathedral, he had a revelatory moment when his heart was so full he could not deny God anymore. In his own words, "In an instant my heart was touched and I believed. I believed with such a force of adhesion, with such an uprising in my whole being, with such a powerful conviction, with such a certainty leaving no room for any kind of doubt, that since then all the books, all the reasoning, all the hazards of a troubled life have not been able to shake my faith, nor, to tell the truth, touch it." Number 32. Joan of Arc is perhaps one of the most famous figures in French history. A woman who dressed and fought as a man for her cause and claimed to have visions, she was burned at the stake at Rouen in 1431. It was at Notre Dame in November of 1455 that a posthumous trial was requested to rehabilitate Joan of Arc and clear her name, a trial which ended in July of 1456 with the charges nullified. Joan of Arc was canonized at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome in 1920. 60,000 people attended the ceremony, including 140 descendants of Joan's family. Number 33. When the fire ravaged the beautiful cathedral, many despaired of its ever being rebuilt, worried that there was too much damage to properly reconstruct and that some parts of the cathedral could not be reworked in their original form. Unverified tales of a video game to the rescue surfaced very early. Assassin's Creed had digitally mapped the cathedral for their game, and rumors were flying that Ubisoft was assisting in the efforts to rebuild Notre Dame in all its glory. Number 34. Certainly instrumental in the rebuilding of Notre Dame is the Compagnons de Devoir, or Companions of Duty. This is a secret society of great craftsmen which dates back to the Middle Ages. Shrouded in mystery, this secret brotherhood has been training young people in a variety of specialized crafts for 900 years. Apprenticeships begin in roughly the 3rd grade. Trained over years, their society involves its own secret initiations, rituals, and ceremonies, all closely guarded secrets held behind closed doors. But who better to help rebuild medieval architecture than those trained in those very crafts and methods? Number 35. Today, December 8th, the dedication of the refurbished Notre Dame takes place, including a special consecration of the new altar. This altar houses relics of 5 saints: Marie-Eugène Milleray, Madeleine Sophie Barat, Catherine Labouré, Charles de Foucauld, and the Blessed Vladimir Giga. Happy reopening day to Notre Dame. May she stand for eternity.